Hey everyone, Ben here. Today I'm talking to Niels Pfläging, who wrote one of the books that made me go into consulting. If you follow both of us, you might know that we're not agreeing on 100% of what the other person has to say, but that's exactly the reason why I always learn something when engaging with Niels. So without further ado, let's jump into today's episode.
Niels, welcome to my show. They're talking complicated verse complex, gonna let that knowledge flow. From beyond budgeting days to BetaCodex ways, they're slamming top down nonsense, busting out of old school craze.
Niels, welcome to the Stellar Work podcast. So cool having you here.
Thank you for inviting me, Benjamin.
Of course. Your book, Organized for Complexity, was one of the first books that I got my hands on during university, which actually helped me on my career and pinpointed me into consulting. I'm not sure if that was the intention of you publishing the book, but at least for me, that was how it impacted my life. So I really wanted to have you on the show.
Yeah, thanks. I'm glad to hear that, because one of the ideas actually was to help consultants, trainers, coaches as well with their work with organizations. So you probably have the German edition?
Both.
Both. Okay. So this is the latest edition in English, which I'm holding up for those who are not watching this. And yes, the idea was to not just help people in organizations conceive collaboration and work in better ways, more functional ways and complexity, but also to help consultants. Yeah. So I'm delighted to hear that this helped you orient your career.
Yeah, 100%. But before we dig into that, for everyone who does not know who you are and what you did, what you're doing, could you introduce yourself to us?
Yes, my name is Niels Pfläging. 20 years ago, I started working as a consultant and I became a director of the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable, an international think tank that was researching ways of doing away with budgeting, annual planning, command and control, organizing. And I was a director of the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable for 5 years, between 2003 and 2007. And then I started a new think tank called the BetaCodex Network, where we went even deeper into researching decentralization, how to make it happen, organizations everywhere, internationally, in all kinds of industries. So yes, I've been in this as a researcher, as an author and writer, as a practitioner and consultant for 20 years, more than 20 years. So I wrote several books, like these here in English, but even more in German. And yes, I sometimes wonder why this kind of transformation that we have been suggesting for 20 years is taking so long. Yeah, but I'm still positive it will happen. It will unfold more massively in the future.
I mean, everyone who's on LinkedIn is sort of following you or the bubble around you knows that you're on the hunt for truth is what I got from you. And you're challenging the existing ways or the popular ways that are out there of reorganizing teams or initially structuring teams and organizations. What is your take on what is maybe going wrong or in the wrong direction at the moment?
Yes, I think for a couple of decades already, there has been the passion for tools has been overwhelming for a few decades. This is nothing new, and I'm not the first to say this. Much
you mean digital tools like Atlassian or Microsoft tools, or what tools are you talking about?
Digital tools also, but mostly management tools. Let's take a simple example, feedback. It's still around today. I saw in a newsletter also, I saw propaganda for feedback.
Well, feedback is a good thing in it, isn't it? Feedback is a good thing in it, isn't it?
Feedback is a good thing until you turn it into a tool. Then it becomes totally toxic and destructive and vicious. It's an orc thing, I would say. Orc, like in Lord of the Rings, the evil. Yeah. So, no, feedback. If you give me feedback now about what I'm saying, or I give a feedback to you about what you're saying, that's fine. But the other thing, the technique, it's totally, it's evil, really. But of course, this prolongs into management tools like budgeting, performance appraisal, fixed target, bonus systems. We have known for decades that all these things are toxic and bad and evil. Or let's say other communication stuff like, let's say brainstorming, for example, has never worked, cannot work. It's pretty obvious that those methods cannot work or improve anything. Or let's say take management by objectives. which became rebaptized a couple of years ago as OKRs and is now another fad, already fading away again. But, so the passion for tools, and I'm not talking of technology tools, but organizational tools, interaction tools. I'll take another example. There is a fairly stable belief in that meetings serve to make decisions, which is a stupid idea. And even the best experts on meetings, I've read all the research on meetings, and even the so-called specialists on meetings have not yet understood that decisions should never be made, almost never be made in meetings, that meetings are not good for decision-making.
Why is that?
Well, I will not explain everything right now.
Okay.
But the thing is, you said that people might be perceived as provocative. I think that's what you implied. Or that I'm taking a thorough stance against stuff. And yes, I think it's very important for all of us to take a very clear stance against stuff that doesn't work, that cannot work, that is anti-scientific, and to bash it, in a way, and to make it illegal, even, or to condemn it and to eliminate it and expel it from our organizations. And this hasn't happened. Most people, consultants, trainers, coaches, are actually populists, I think. They try to sell the latest fads and adhere to people's their clients' lowest instincts to sell their stuff, and we shouldn't continue that. That's why I think very highly of those people in history like Edward Deming or Peter Drucker, who have also argued passionately against stupid tools and the wrong stance on management.
But on the other hand, if people are facing challenges, if like a leadership team or a board of a company is facing challenges and they're looking for answers, the most asked question probably is, how do we do it? And the answer of how is like a step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you will find that in tools like frameworks, blueprints, concepts that exist out there that give you the guidance and the steps for solving the challenges you have. I think I can't really blame them because it sounds really attractive. But what is the underlying issues behind that?
We shouldn't blame managers for anything, but they should take responsibility for doing stupid stuff. It's like Forrest Gump, this thing. It's stupid. Stupid people. Stupid is what is to do stupid things, And of course, using blueprints and rules and step processes, and so that means that implies that the problem you want to solve is complicated. I wrote a couple of books about complexity for that simple reason, for people to distinguish better between the complicated and the complex. So when you have a complicated problem, like how to produce a car that's already developed in a way that's uniform and standardized and high quality, that's a complicated problem. Fundamentally, that's a complicated problem, the standardized process. But what you described, a challenge of developing an organization, that's not a complicated process. So any blueprint or step-by-step guide or tool cannot solve your problem. You need thinking, ideas, or reflection, discourse. You have to communitize or socialize the problem with people. So tools are being abused for complex problems. That's what you might say. Or managers who are incapable of distinguishing between the complicated and the complex, we often call it the blue and the red. They have themselves to blame it if they fuck up things or if things get fucked up. So yes, it's very important to be a professional and not to fall for oversimplifying methods, approaches, frameworks. I always like to say all frameworks are evil. This might be a good rule of thumb for managers who might listen to this and who might be thinking, how can I distinguish good tools from bad tools? Everything that's called a framework suggests that there is a simple solution for a complex problem, and that can never work out.
People don't I'm wondering as a consultant, if I cannot show them a step-by-step guide on how to do things, what am I really contributing to them? What is my value proposition that I'm going to offer them? And I see consultants and coaches out there moving away from the framework and blueprint, just like you mentioned, and they would call their solutions like a pattern library. I've done an episode with Jürgen Appelo, who calls his unfix approach a pattern library.
Yes.
What is your take on pattern libraries? Because they seem to be better than frameworks or blueprints, or is it just another name for the same stuff?
Yeah, I think that's the art of fraud, or to name things differently so that you become distinguishable through other names. Or that actually those efforts to rename a framework into something different is a way of killing off what's really different and competing with what's really different, which would be advice giving. consultation, social process. Those are the things that are non-framework. But these silly fetish concepts, also, you just mentioned libraries of what? Libraries of?
Pattern libraries. So basically, it's like a Wikipedia. You could just type in whatever problem you have. Like that would be the best case scenario. You could type in the problem you have. Then you get like 7 different patterns, and you can choose your pattern that fits your situation.
I heard this guy talking about this dream of his of achieving kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, it's a lunacy. I think it shows more about that person's quality of thinking than about current reality. Because current reality is that the problems in organizations are predominantly complex. There are lots of people, well-educated people in organizations these days, highly qualified people, engineers, technicians, software programmers, etc. And they're perfectly capable of solving the blue stuff, the complicated stuff by themselves. Now, if we try to find simple or complicated solutions for complex problems like organizational development, then we are bound to lose. There's no way of winning, because complex problems can only be solved with complex answers, with complex solutions. We call them complexitudes. So that's why, for example, if I have a conflict, some silly app might tell me, okay, type in conflict, and then what should you do? Do it, get feedback, or do feedback, give feedback, get feedback, or whatever. Use Lego Serious Play, use facilitation, use the questionnaire here and the sheet.
Yeah, you get some sort of conflict resolution progress or facilitation framework that you could follow.
Stuff, and then you try that. It's only that the problem is that whenever you have conflict, the obvious solution should be the most radical thing that organizations that are, as I suggest them, do is, of course, what? Fucking talk to each other. Have a conversation. Or as the Americans say, have a fucking conversation, right? So talk to each other. That's the most radical thing, the most complex thing you can do. You have a conflict, you have a problem, talk with each other, Don't write emails, don't go through a checklist, don't use an app, talk to each other. That's the radical thing, because that's how we solve complex problems, by getting more, raising the quality of interactions, and not by getting in stupid tools. I think one of the best examples of a stupid tool is OKRs, which, or let's say the alternative to strategy management, which came up a decade ago or so. It's like canvases. Those are also stupid tools that to supplant thinking and dialogue and discourse and having, a brawl and a little bit fighting about perceptions and realities and intentions and identity, and supplant that with tools.
I have to admit, at this point, I never understood canvases. To me, it always felt like checklists that I go through with my team. But I never really got the idea of putting that into a canvas. It was more sort of a map that gives me not even a map. It's a checklist that reminds me of things that I need to be reminded of. Have I thought about revenue streams? Oh, yes. Yeah, I did. We got a plan here. Check that.
Yes.
Does it fit into the canvas like an A4 paper or an A3 paper? Of course not. So why put it in there?
But also the hubris of facilitators to think that with such checklists turned canvases, they can create strategic dialogue. It is unbearable to me. It is, I find that highly, highly problematic, because of course it is hard to talk about identity and the future and real problems, real trouble that an organization has.
And it actually needs the conflict.
With a silly tool like a checklist, a visualized checklist. That's what all canvases are. You are totally right? To believe that armed with a simple checklist, you can bring people to actually think differently, it's mere hubris. I'm a fervent defender of advisory, to become trusted advisors. That's what I aspire to. That's what my partner Silke Hermann aspires to, and everyone who I work with, we aspire to be trusted advisors. I learned my ropes about advisory from people like Alan Weiss, David Maister, and so on, authors and experts or Peter Block as well, and people who really aspire to, change the world by being good consultants.
So, what is a good consultant?
Well, you can recognize a good consultant by fairly obvious things. For example, that you say no to the client most of the time. The client, for example, the first thing that when we meet a client, you are a consultant too, right? When we meet a client, the first thing usually that a client does to us is to tell us what the problem is and what solution he or he thinks is right, and to demand that solution from you. For example, they ask us things like, can you help us implement OKRs? The first thing a consultant will say is no, and then explain why. A trainer or a coach is somebody who might bend over at that very moment and say, yes, Sophia, sure, I can tell you, I can give you that. But an advisor, a trusted advisor, earns trust by broadening the client's scope and understanding, by deepening the client's thinking and understanding. And that's it's not a difficult thing. It doesn't require you to be super intelligent. It requires you to take the stance to invite the client to think along with you, to meet you on eye level and to understand the trouble better. For example, if at the start of my career, I had clients asking me for a rolling forecast for forecasting, because I came from the controlling side of doing things, the finance management side. And sometimes the clients told me they wanted to do forecasting, and then I said, let's stop here. Let's ask ourselves why you're thinking that forecasting could be a solution, right? And it turned out it never would have solved anything. They didn't want forecasting. They wanted to tell us something entirely different. And today it's the same, right? Nobody wants OKRs. It's a dilemma, the eternal dilemma of consulting. The client thinks that she or he understands the problem, but doesn't. That's why we as consultants have to help assist the client in understanding the problems better and find appropriate solutions. But
So
usually,
actually,
the solution follows a better understanding. So first we have to work the understanding, then the solutions.
so actually, you're not saying no to that client. You're asking, what do you need OKR for? What do you aspire to do with that?
In the case of OKRs or other dumb stuff, I say no. And I say, if you think that OKRs are a problem, then please go to somebody more stupid than myself to do the job for you. Of course, we are talking here on an abstract level, a little bit on an abstract level. But I say something like that. Of course, I read books and I developed solutions as well, so that people do not call me asking stupid questions or asking for stupid solutions. Yeah. So usually when a client calls me, I had this kind of call exactly 1 year ago, and the CEO on the other side, a woman, Andrea, she said, you don't have to explain to me anything. I already know that I want cell structure design. The question is, can we do it together? Can you help me to do it? Because I want cell structure design. And I didn't say no to her. I said, okay, let's talk about what this would involve, or tell me about your problem, or that you think.
So, give me a second. Give me a brief second here.
please.
Cell structure design is something that you came up with. Am I correct? I've seen it on your
Yes,
So
that's a social technology. The tool, a social technology. It's complex. It's open source. Everybody can use it, and we published that 4 or 5 years ago. Yes. So that's an approach. That's not a framework. It's based on principles, not rules, which distinguishes it from agile frameworks or so. Agile scaling stuff. So it's based on principles, not rules. It's very crisp, very clear, and it's a way of creating decentralized organizations. Yes.
So she asked you about cell structure design, and
yes.
What happened then?
And then we did it. Half a year later, we were done with it.
Even though she didn't really came with a problem to you, she came with a solution in mind already.
No. We of course, when she told me that, I didn't have to convince her. I told her, you have to still convince me that you understand your problems, and I need to understand your problems. So let's talk about your problems that you really have. But again, cell structure design is not a tool. It's a and all that needs to be clarified. For example, usually I would clarify, you understand that cell structure design isn't something that you can just implement without people involving. And we had all this conversation. But yes, I think there is a lack of understanding of the distinction between tools and what we call social technologies or complexity tools. Stuff that works and stuff that cannot work in complexity. So
do you have like a litmus test for the distinguishing factors between those two?
Sure. I mean, it's in the book that you have too, the Organized Book for Complexity book. It's not even a litmus test. There is a whole list of garbage tools.
So you could just go through that book and see if it's mentioned.
No. There's one page. I'm not sure which page it's on, but there's a whole page. Also there's another bestseller, published it in English, but in German, it's Complexity Tools. But I don't know. That book also has a list of bullshit tools. So yes, we make that very explicit, and basically it's very, once you understand the difference between complicated and complex, things turn pretty easy. Let's say if you have a complicated problem, there is a right and a wrong. There is an then relation between problem and solution. Yes. For example, if you want to do accounting, bookkeeping, that's a complicated problem, a blue problem. There is a right and a wrong way of handling things, of bookkeeping. So bookkeeping is fundamentally very, very dominantly a complicated problem. So there's a right and a wrong. And that's good. Yeah. Creative book accounting or creative bookkeeping, that also exists, but it gets it to prison usually. Yes. And for good reasons. Accounting is a blue problem. The future is a red problem.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the future is bound with complexity, surprise, dynamics, volatility. Therefore, doing annual planning, so sitting down at the end of the year, projecting stuff into the future, deriving numbers and setting them, fixing them as targets. That's why planning, fixed targets, incentives connected to fixed targets. All that is under complex bullshit or under complex bogus. Yes. So for a complex problem, you should never seek for a complicated tool or a complicated tool. Which is why forecasting, the right way to do forecasting is you have a problem, you need to decide on now. Cannot avoid the decision. Do a little forecasting, make the decision, throw away the forecast. Never look at it again, because it will be completely, utterly useless, because tomorrow things will already be different. But you had to make the decision today. That's what futurizing should be about.
Yeah, it really reminds me of the situation the German automobile industry is currently in, because when they set up a factory, they would have to make a plan for the next 6 or 7 years and sort of anticipate the sales figures and sort of see that they have a high usability score within their factory.
Yes.
So they are forced to do the financials and forecasting for that factory for the next 6 years.
That's why you calculate the return on investment for that thing and the payback period, and that requires some level of forecasting, of course.
Yeah, you do the discounted cash flow and all of that.
That can be obsolete already. Still, you have that decision made. You cannot make it back. That's why intelligent people, this is another advice for intelligent managers, make important decisions, take them as late as possible. All important decisions should be made as late as possible, not as early as possible. That's just not professional, In a complex world, make decisions as late as possible. Otherwise, you create unnecessary risk. If the world is volatile, dynamic, and complex, then why make decisions about the future that are relevant to the future and that you cannot go back after the decisions? Why make them early? You have to take them late, which is one of the 100 reasons why budgeting and planning is utter bogus and really dangerous. What is it called? These cult actions that you have that have no reason that are bounded in
cargo culting, the story of the cargo
exactly.
culting. Yeah,
they're total cargo cults. Yeah. So yes, they are rituals that have no substance in reality, which doesn't mean that they are utterly useless. They might be useful to stabilize stupidity or something like that, right?
Or maybe to feed egos.
Exactly, or to feed egos, which are often encountered in management suites, right?
Oh, definitely, and in consulting as well.
And in consulting, exactly, everywhere. Yes. We have of course, our egos might sometimes come in the way as well. It has been one of the things that I had to learn in consulting was really to control my own ego.
Mm-hmm.
That it took me a while.
How do you do it?
I work with a partner as well, Sika Hermann, who helps me control my ego.
So what is your strategy behind controlling your ego?
No, there's no strategy. There's just wisdom coming in. I think I have become a little bit wiser, so I can control my ego better. I do not talk as much. I do not give away the solutions as easily, but help clients figure out things for themselves. We have developed all these methods: cell-structure design, relative targets. That's the name of the social technologies we created, right? Cell-structure design, relative targets, open space beta, and the BetaCodex, and other stuff. We have created it exactly to control people's egos, our own egos as well, to create approaches that can work with average people, normal consultants, and normal companies with normal employees. They work with everyone, and still they are reliably getting to transformation. And that requires getting rid of stupid tools. That means that we have to control ourselves, not to give solutions to problems that are not well understood, etc.
Yeah. So we talked quite a bit on things that don't work. And this podcast is mainly about transformation, and we covered a lot of content already on transformation. So I would wonder, could you give us or push us into a direction that is more helpful regarding transformation? What would, not asking you for a blueprint or approach, because I'm very sure that you're not giving it away anyway, but what would your advice be for, let's say, a CEO who runs a company that is not doing too great and he or she knows that something needs to change here?
Yeah. but I'm in the business of giving things away because that's why the stuff that we develop is open source, so I'm not hiding anything.
Okay.
Actually, everyone can get anything from me, all the materials that I use, because we made these things open source. So, and that's making your inventions, your creations open source. It means to share aggressively. So if you ask me, okay, there's a company that's in dire straits, they have problems, yes, and the CEO or so, similar general manager or owner or whatever wants to change things, I would recommend to stay away from all change management approaches. They cannot work, and to opt for what we call time-boxed change. Time-boxed change means doing the organizational development work with all the willing in the company, invite everyone in the company or the organization, and then do it fast in a time-boxed fashion within 90 days. We call that approach open space beta. You do not have to buy the book. There is a lot of material on open space beta out there on the internet, so people can read almost everything about it for free and get everything for free. The book is not for free because printing a book, I'm not that rich so that I want to print books for everybody who's vaguely interested in the thing. Yeah, but all the social technology is free to use. So yes, we figured out that this was 6 years ago, that by inviting, if a sponsor invites everyone in the organization to start working the system together, and the second, so starting in an open space format with an open space large conference, and then doing another open space conference 90 days afterwards to close the cycle of learning and changing, or flipping as we call it, of transformation. So there's one open space and another open space 90 days after. So then the transformation takes exactly 90 days, and a lot can be achieved in 90 days. We believe that to get from command and control to decentralized, social, self-organized, and democratic takes 90 days. It worked within 90 days, that's we know, and we had to develop a method to make it happen in 90 days. So yeah, that's what we figured out, how it could.
So does this work for every company of every kind?
Yes.
Like even if you're like a huge corporation, like say Volkswagen, you just invite everyone, or how does that work?
Yes. I mean, yes, it will work if you have a sponsor who really, really wants this.
Mm-hmm.
And if you apply the method rigorously, and yes, then it will work. Fact is, Volkswagen is not a company.
Yeah, it's a group
of many, many companies. So it's a strongly suffering organization. It's suffering from many reasons. So probably at Volkswagen, some part of the organization would probably do it. Or you would have to have several sponsors and several initiatives going on, but they could do it all at the same time. And it's no problem. The thing with open space beta that it scales effortlessly because you invite everyone to do it together. So at Volkswagen, in principle, you could invite all the 300,000, 400,000 people to do it all at the same time, all guided by BetaCodex principles, all within the same methodology, and get done in 90 days. The problem is that at Volkswagen, nobody wants anything. Something I have learned in the last 20 years, you didn't ask me, but I'm sharing another learning of 20 years of consulting, is that many managers in the organization, many organizations do not have a soul, right? But I would simplify a little bit. Many organizations have a death wish. There is a death wish in many organizations, like Volkswagen and so on. But I could make a long list of organizations that have a death wish. One of the great thinkers I admire so much, W. Edwards Deming, he said something that it took me a while to figure out what he meant by this. He once said, nobody gives a hoot about profits. First, I didn't understand what hoot meant. I think it's shit. Nobody gives a shit. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So today, Edwards Deming would say, nobody gives a shit about profits. And what does that mean? Every organization needs profits to survive. However, in practice, in most organizations, nobody gives a shit about that reality. People do things, organizations like Volkswagen, do almost close to nothing that would help them to make a profit or to improve profit or to increase profit, to have a healthy profit. They do stuff that are opposed to profit making. For example, aggressive mergers and acquisitions in the 1980s and 90s, and still many companies that do mergers and acquisitions today, they want to grow, they want scale, they want size, they want big, they want to be big. That's opposed to profit making. And you always have to, and sometimes I wonder, isn't this a secret death wish? Why don't you just want to become the best organization? Then you can grow naturally over time. And you will be unbeatable if you are always the best and the most profitable profitable competitor, everyone will obey and crawl into you under your umbrella over time. It might take 100 years, but ultimately you will win the market. If you are always the best and the most profitable, that's the secret to success.
I mean, with the mergers and acquisitions, what I see is that most of the time huge corporations acquire smaller companies because the train is already on the way. It's too late to create their own train. It's too late to jump on the hype and build it and start because they're too slow. So instead of jumping on that train, they just buy the whole train in itself and also buy the competitor, the potential competitor once they grow.
Yes, it's an act of self-defense. We cannot innovate anymore. We understand that we are incapable of innovating because we have too much command and control, too much bureaucracy, too much centralization, too much bullshit rules. We have a guidebook for innovation and a budget for innovation, and that because those are complicated tools for complex means, innovating, futurizing, etc. So we're killing ourselves softly, and that's why from time to time we have to acquire competitors or new companies to survive, to buy in some innovation. Yeah, you're right. That's an admission of guilt, in most cases. I found that very sad. But also, of course, that too many startups exist who are doing the same. We're just faking that they are innovative, faking that they are interesting, that are not real businesses, but only shallow.
They're just a shell of a company.
Yeah, shells
dressing up to be bought out, but not actually playing the long game.
Much of that comes from, let's not talk about the startups. Maybe that was a deviation from our topic, but fundamentally, I think the suffering in organizations large and small from their own command and control structures, their centralization, their Soviet-style planning, an overburdening amount of rules, all that creates a lot of suffering. And the suffering is financial, in profitability, is people who cannot grow, cannot learn enough, whose motivation gets stifled, and clients as well who do not get the most innovative products or services possible, and so on. So everybody suffers, and in the end, our society suffers for not reaping in so much tax, as they could if our organizations were more agile and more fast move. So yeah, we need to overcome command and control. That's my way of looking at those.
Let's get back to the Volkswagen topic and the open space beta. I think that most of the people interested in running open space beta would not be on the board seat of a huge group or company. Maybe they just run a team or a department, or maybe are responsible for a product or a product launch. Does it make sense to transform on that small scale?
No, you cannot transform a department. You cannot transform a process within, let's say, Volkswagen or any company. So you have to move up a level or two, for example, to a business unit or an entity, a legal entity. Within a company like Volkswagen, there are hundreds of legal entities, hundreds of businesses, include the bank, for example. Let's take Volkswagen Bank. There is a bank which might in turn also be divided into several corporate entities or different businesses that are sufficiently standalone, sufficiently independent so that you could transform them. So let's say any corporation has this plethora of entities that could be transformed one by one.
So you think transformations is only possible within a certain business case?
Interesting how you frame the word.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong.
Within a business case, I thought a business case is the rationale of how to change things. A business case for you is what?
The business case is like a part. So transformation would the way I understood you is transformation makes only sense if the thing that gets transformed has a whole self-sufficient business case in itself. Like
yes. It has a business. I wouldn't call it a business case.
Okay, yeah,
I would call it a business. Yes, if there is a standalone business, so you cannot slice and dice organizations. That's my preferred way of explaining it. So you cannot take out the logistics department at Volkswagen car manufacturing and transform that. No, you have to take some car business. You might take a factory at Volkswagen. That might be an entity that's sufficiently, business. Or you might take a business unit or a legal entity. It depends on, or it might be a region. So if you, dear listener, are a small cog in the machine of Volkswagen, and maybe you have to work yourself way up, you have to sell the idea up a little bit. But again, at the risk of repeating myself, there is so much suffering at companies that are command control It is not so difficult to sell these things up. It just requires the passion to explain and to say, I will not take no as an answer. We need to do this. Of course, we need to decentralize. Of course, we need to find complex answers to complex solutions instead of implementing more stupid, complicated tools and bullshit frameworks from the Netherlands. So here we are in a situation where companies like Volkswagen have repeated the bullshit. They have not become Toyota. Toyota has done all these things 50, 60, 70 years ago. They've been practicing decentralization, a consistent self-organization by and large, right? There are some pockets of stupidity at Toyota as well. I don't want to idealize companies, but by and large, Toyota has managed to be rigorously decentralized consistently, what they call TPS lean, or what you might call lean. So that's the kind of organization that we should look at. It is totally possible. It can be sustained over decades.
Do you have more modern examples of companies that we can look up to? I mean, Toyota is a fairly old company, and the example of Toyota being the primus of the class is being taught by consultants for the last 25, 30 years maybe. Is there any company out there that you would look at and see hey, look at them and get inspired by what they do?
Sure. I mean, that has an interest. I said before that I joined the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable 20 years ago, in 2003. The Beyond Budgeting Roundtable did something exceptional at the time. The idea was to prove that an alternative to command and control was possible. But when we now call the BetaCodex, it was then called the Beyond Budgeting Model. We called it like that. And one of the, let's say, research assumptions was this alternative model, it cannot be utopian. It must exist somewhere out there. There must be companies that are already doing it. We're just not aware. So my colleagues, the founders of the Beyond Budgeting Roundtable, they went out to find these organizations. And they went to not so great case companies, Rhodia, Borealis. Not so great, but they did some things right. And then they found the first excellent case that they found. Do you know which one it was?
Tell me.
The wonderful Beyond Budgeting case, or BetaCodex case. The first that they found was Handelsbanken, the Swedish bank. At the time, they had 10,000 people. They now have maybe 12,000 people or so. Europe's most successful bank for more than 50 years, so longer than we live. And they made this transformation in 1971. So once they understood the model that Handelsbanken had, the principles became more and more apparent that you would look for in this kind of not command and control, beyond budgeting organizations. So then we figured out, or we found case examples like AES at the time, an energy company, wonderful energy company. There's a great book about it, Joy at Work. And we found companies like Southwest Airlines, excellent airline. You probably have heard of it or know it even. It's one of the best known case examples everywhere. We found WL Gore, then we found Semco, then we found in Brazil, then we found DM Drogeriemarkt here in Germany. I actually found that. Yes, and of course, in later, over the last couple of years, or over the last decade or so, other companies became obvious to us, like Morningstar in the United States and California, or Burzorg. And interestingly, for example, Burzorg actually, when Jos de Blok of Burzorg founded, it's a health care company, fundamentally a healthcare company. It was founded as a healthcare company, to be precise. When he looked for a way how to run the business, how to develop a performance management system, so to speak, for Burzorg, he looked at Handelsbanken and said, we will do exactly that. That's the perfect system. Burzorg at the time, they founded their organization, which now has, 20,000 people or more. They copied Handelsbanken system. Of course, DM Drogeriemarkt in Germany with I think, 70,000 people, has a very, very similar system. And apparently it was developed independently of Handelsbanken. So we have found these kind of performance systems, this kind of decentralized structure in many organizations. I've just talked about or mentioned.
Yeah. I'm wondering, at the beginning of our episode, we talked about the nonsense of following blueprints or copying.
Yes.
And right now you mentioned that they would look at Handelsbanken and see what they do and just copy what they did. Or did I get you wrong?
Yeah, copied in terms of principles. Yeah, you're right. When I say copied, it's an oversimplification. Yeah. Oh, you got it. But still, let's say they aspire to apply the same principles as not all the practice, but still many of the practices that Handelsbanken has, you will probably find them at Burzorg. Yes, not same, copy, paste, but similar stuff. For example, having league tables for teams in the periphery, that would be essential. The team sizes would be similarly small and so on. So the principles that is why to avoid misunderstandings like that. Are we copying the practices or are we copying the principles? This has been a long problem with Toyota, for example. Most companies, for example, all the German car manufacturers, you're German, I'm German, all the German car manufacturers, Porsche, BMW, Mercedes, Volkswagen, they have copied many practices of Toyota, but none has really, really copied the model, the principles, the humanity of the Toyota production system, for example. That's why they're all suffering.
There's one interesting story at Porsche. I don't know if it's true, but it makes a good story. Is that so Toyota has its own consultancy part, which brings the Toyota production system or lean, depending on who you sell it to, I guess, to other car manufacturers and help them with their factory design.
And
there was one factory leader of Porsche who was getting consultancy and buying consultancy from them, and then was planning an audit. So they would come in and look at his factory and the way he designs it and evaluate it, give it a score, give him tips, so on. And he wanted to really brag because he wanted to upper his management position. So he aimed for a really, really good score. So he got through the factory and bought the same shelves that Toyota had, bought the same equipment that Toyota have, sort of arranged it in the same way that Toyota had. And then on the day of the audit, he grouped up with the consultants from Toyota and they were walking through that factory. And by the end, he was asking, so what do you think about it? And they said, well, it looks very much like our space, but why do you work in a storage place, in a storage hall? So because there was so many half-processed goods and half-done parts of cars and everything was stacked in it. Right, there was so much capital bound on it that made them think that they didn't really get it. They just tried to copy what was visible, like the visible changes, the visible differences between the two factories, like the equipment they have, like the storage units they had, maybe the layout they did. Yeah, the obvious stuff, right? But to them, it was quite obvious that what they haven't got is like the culture of pointing things out and being like everyone is being brave and being open with improvement and taking leadership for it and trying stuff out. Like they were not sourcing from the people who actually work at the problems or at the challenges on the shop floor level. They would just top down looking at it and just overlook the parts. However, he was furious about the results because of that bad score. So at one night, he canceled the night shift for everyone. And that is a story. It might be made up, but I really love it. He canceled the night shift and went in and sawed half of the shelves. So he was cutting the storage units by half and dismantling 50% of the storage units inside the factory to get rid of that capital that was sitting on that shelf.
Yes, that's typical. Yeah, is that the end of the story? No.
That is the end of the story. I don't know how it goes further. I just got it told by one of the Mercedes employees, one of the Mercedes managers that I work with.
It's a story they tell about somebody from BMW.
No, I have another story of BMW and Mercedes. But
in the story, is it a BMW plant manager?
No, it's a Porsche.
A Porsche. Okay. So that's the bad stories that people at Mercedes tell about people at Porsche.
One of the many.
It could be. I can imagine it's true. Maybe it wasn't a Porsche guy, but yeah, okay. Yeah, I like the story enough to like the idea that it's true. I mean, one of the obvious consequences of lean, of TPS, of the Toyota system is that you will not have inventory. So somebody who has not understood that, the concept of one-piece flow in car manufacturing, there are other ways of organizing flow in other businesses, in other production companies. Somebody who hasn't grasped that flow means not having inventory or close to zero inventory, hasn't understood anything. So it's a really nasty story, really, about, I like it. It's a little vicious, but it's the kind of thing that people tell themselves about their competitors.
That's why also I wanted to like pinpoint what you said when you said they copied Handelsbanken, because one thing that is really important to me is that I love to learn from other companies, but it does not make any sense to look at the company and see the practices on a surface level that they're doing and then just copying it, right? It's more interesting to learn how did they get to that practice in the first place? Like, what did they do before that? How would that discussion go? What is the management team? What is the philosophy behind it? And you might end up with something you cannot copy, right? But it's still very inspiring to look at.
Yeah. This leads me to another thing that should be outlawed. It should be made illegal. That's incredibly stupid. It's learning safaris. Do you know what a learning safari is? You travel to whatever, Silicon Valley or to Japan to visit Toyota or to some place or to some cool company and visit it. That's the most stupid thing because you cannot learn from other companies. I always like to tell my clients, I do not always tell them, but sometimes I tell them right at the start, do not try to go there to a great company that I'm talking about our ex-clients, because just visiting them, there's, looking around and asking silly questions will not help your learning at all. You should do it the other way. You should first understand the theory, read, study, and then you can see it in practice and see how they did it. So you first have to understand the theory to then understand the case. So visiting a Toyota plant, I've heard people talking about, I remember a particular woman 15 years or so ago, she said, yeah, I visited 1 or 2 Toyota plants in Japan, and they just looked just like average car plants. And there were cars and production lines. And she didn't want to be nasty, but the correct reply would have been to say, yeah, you went there, you looked, and you weren't capable of understanding anything because you were uneducated, you were lacking theory. Now you are, doing bullshit propaganda, because you need to appreciate the difference between a command and control organization and a decentralized, highly self-organized, very agile, very Toyota-ish organization. You need to understand the conceptual differences between and how that plays out. In Toyota, for example, this goes for Southwest Airlines, Semco, Handelsbanken, W. Gore. The most interesting things is not the things that you see in a Toyota plant, it's the things that aren't there. For example, supervisors, inventory, automation. Toyota has the lowest level. I know that you are active in the car business as well. Toyota has the lowest level of automation in car production. And for good reason, because something that you automate cannot be easy. It's easier to improve forever if you have humans do this stuff.
I think you're right, but you will be wrong in 5 years.
No, I will never be wrong. Imagine you have a totally automatized AI-driven car factory. By the way, those kind of experiments have existed for a long time, right?
Yeah.
That factory, on the day you open it, you turn the key and it starts working, it is obsolete already. Complexity.
I don't think so. If you have an adaptive factory that just by looking at the parts would automatically knew what to produce and how to produce it, if the cost of programming and rearranging machines gets so low and the factory so flexible.
You are the victim of tech propaganda, my dear Benjamin.
You think so?
Yes, totally. Because think of it again. You have a factory with 0 people, or you have a factory with hundreds of people working there.
Well, I think of like 10.
Yeah, but the 10 people, it's never 10. Because if you have a highly automatized system, you need people programming the machines, writing the software, solving bugs. It's very expensive to have all that. Instead of having workers improving the process all the time and thinking all the time. That's what Toyota has. So the worst factory is the totally automated one. It cannot improve by itself. It will be the problem is if you try to optimize a system for automation, you kill it at that moment. But Toyota has achieved the opposite. They have achieved a way of building a company that is reinventing itself, Kaizen, all the time.
I guess we have to do another episode in at last 5 years, maybe earlier.
It's the same conversation all the time. In 5 years, things will be different. AI will have developed cognitive. AI does not have ideas. This is very important. The belief, the common nonsense belief, bogus belief that AI will develop conscience. First of all, we will then all be dead. Secondly, nobody has a clue of cognition yet, of conscience. So machines cannot create ideas. What AI does is not to create ideas. So it doesn't produce knowledge. It just masticates, it just digests knowledge, information, and serves it. So don't be fooled by supposed smartness of AI. If you think machines will build factories, we are all dead by then. I hope it will not happen and not in the next 5 years, because of course the first machine factories will kill people.
We'll have to see, I guess.
Watch the Terminator movies.
It's a movie, Niels.
Yeah, that's why I just told you it's not real. It's not real. Yeah, I just told you. But okay. You want to believe? You are a religious man. It's good to know. I'm not a religious man. I believe in science.
if you want to believe in the future of manufacturing, I can
Wait.
I can pinpoint you into
Wait, no, don't do that. Don't say things that are, that's not okay. Let's turn this around.
Okay.
Yeah, let's wrap this up.
Sure.
This is not a matter of belief. Again, I'm talking about science. I'm talking about facts. And I know that there is manufacturing. You talked about belief in the future. I didn't. I tried to argue with existing rationality, with existing science and insights that we have, why I think a totally automated factory is nonsense. You think that technology will prove otherwise, but that's your thinking.
No. I think
basis of
technology is already available. That's what makes
Which
me
technology?
believe. So you can program an industrial robot within like 5 minutes with a person programming it without any prior programming knowledge. And you have an AI that is already programming industrial robots by looking at the part. And that takes whatever your compute power is capable of. And I think that's just the tip of the iceberg.
That's your belief. Now you're stating belief. The other thing is obvious.
The final thing was
you're telling me about standard roboting technology. Okay.
That is not standard at the moment, but I think
obvious.
It will.
It's obvious that you can, if you have a one-arm robot, you can program it this way.
Oh no, you can have a 5-axle robot doing that.
Future problems. It will not solve future problems. You still have to create the algorithms so that it can create other algorithms. It still will not think about the future. It still will not figure out inventive ways of how to avoid the whole process or whatever.
It will definitely not do that. I'm
and that's just the distinction I wanted.
Yeah. All right. Oh,
but
episode.
There's great future in robotics.
I think so as well. That's
for sure. Oh, that's for sure. It's just interesting. How did we come along? So to cool it down a little bit. And we don't have to agree on anything. We don't have to agree. Our listeners do not have to agree. And the good thing about that we disagreeing here is that now our listeners can take sides and think for themselves. To make a step back, I was hinting at that. We talked about Toyota, right? And when I heard for the first time that Toyota had the lowest level of automation in their factory, it really got me thinking. And my first reaction was just like yours, probably. Now, are they stupid? Yeah. And there is a beauty in that, and it's worth exploring. It's worth thinking about. How should our businesses, what level of automatization should we aspire to? It's just an interesting thought. And I think the opportunity of our conversation and our not agreeing and our ferocious disagreeing here, it gives people the opportunity to think for themselves.
I hope so. I honestly hope so.
And that's good. That's our duty here in the podcast. Not to agree, simply agree on everything.
Oh yeah, 100%. Alrighty. We're at the 1 hour mark.
This was fun again.
Thank you.
Yes.
Like it as well.
Very nice. But we should maybe one more little thought, or maybe an invitation. I would like to invite people to look at the work of W. Edwards Deming, who to me is one of the godfathers of self-organization, decentralization, modern management, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can make a little bit of propaganda, because I admire W. Edwards Deming so much, I edited this book, What Would Deming Do? Last year, with quotes, 160 quotes of W. Edwards Deming, which is like a compilation of his best thinking. Of course, it is not all his best thinking. You can go straight to his books or to books about W. Edwards Deming, but it's a recommendation. And especially as we talked about Toyota a little bit in the last 20 minutes or so, highly recommended reading, highly recommended thinker to look. I think one of the greatest thinkers of all time.
I haven't read the Deming version. I read an orange book. It was someone else. Yeah, I read the Drucker version. It's really cool. For everyone, go check that out. I have the link in the show notes, and definitely worth the read.
Lovely. Great. This
was great talking to you.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here. If people want to catch up with you, continue the conversation, or just have questions, where do people find you?
You can find me on LinkedIn, of course, Niels Pfläging. I'm present on basically all social media platforms. We also run the website of our community, completely open source community, BetaCodex.org. My company, Red42, has a website, www.red42.com. It's written Red 40 with a FORTY and then a 2, so Red40 and the 2.com. So and then of course people can look up my books and many articles on LinkedIn, and I have my own YouTube channel, which I think is notable because there are hundreds of keynote videos, interviews, and short clips and so on. So yeah, there's a lot of free stuff out there that people can turn to.
Again, thank you so much for being here. For everyone else, check out the show notes and connect with Niels. Connect with me on LinkedIn. Let's keep the conversation going. If you disagree with us, you're more than welcome to enter the chat, so to say. And yeah, see you all over on LinkedIn. All right, Niels, thanks for being here. Have a good day. Bye-bye. Thanks for making it to the end of today's episode. If you like the content, you might also like the consultancy and advisory services that Stellarwork is offering. Whether you're introducing new tech, new ways of working, or entering new markets, Stellarwork helps you with your transformation to get measurable results fast. Reach out via info@stellarwork.com or drop us a line on LinkedIn. See you. Bye.
Niels, welcome to my show. They're talking complicated verse complex, gonna let that knowledge flow. From beyond budgeting days to BetaCodex ways, they're slamming top down nonsense, busting out of old school craze. No more silly canvases or that OKR game. Time boxed open space, that's how we're changing the frame. They're cutting out that cargo cult, leaning on real talk. Got a brand new funk approach, so let the baseline rock. We got that funky beta vibe, breaking all them rules. No command and control, no worthless toxic tool. We'll jam on self-organization, let the future unfold. Just talk face to face, that's the story being told. Niels says, check the difference, can't treat complex like it's blue. Quit them shiny frameworks, buddy, they just won't do. He's calling out the budget rituals, the boards that can't decide. Inviting folks to question where the real solutions hide. From Toyota's lean tradition to the banks up in Sweden, it's about those core principles, freedom for the people leading. In 90 days we shake it up, flip the old design. That's open source truth, Stellarwork shine. We got that funky beta vibe, burning bright and bold. No copy-paste illusions, these principles are gold. Niels on the groove, with Benjamin in tow. Complex problems need complex moves, that's just how we flow. Man, we talking freedom, we talking truth, we talking real advice. Let's ditch the half-baked canvases and keep that dialogue nice. We're wrestling with the future, no time for rigid frames. If you want real transformation, trust, talk and fan the flames. Check your ego out the door, grab your team, invite them all. 90 days to make that call, yeah, we tear that structure down. We got that funky beta vibe, breaking all them rules. No command and control, no worthless toxic tool. We'll jam on self-organization, let the future unfold. Just talk face to face, that's the story being told. So groove on with Benjamin's show, let that knowledge ignite. Niels brought the spark, they're keeping it funky and bright. From the shop floor to the boardroom, gotta break the mold. Stellarwork, card gags grooving with a brand new story told. So groove on with Benjamin's show, let that knowledge ignite. Niels brought the spark, they're keeping it funky and bright. From the shop floor to the boardroom, gotta break the mold. Stellarwork, podcast grooving with a brand new story told.